Hey guys, how's it going? And welcome to another special interview we got here. And this time we're with Josh here with his game Zoo Tiles. Or is it called Zoo Tiles? Now I just blanked on that.
Yeah,
It's
Zutile's Hime is actually what
Hime.
the title of it.
That was the
Yeah.
last part. I was like, I know, because I was just looking at it and I was like, oh, I know. That sounds like a Japanese name because I'm in the middle of learning Japanese now. So I was like, oh, that sounds like.
Apparently, it's Japanese for princess or something of that
Oh,
nature.
okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. I guess first, if you want to introduce sort of who you are and what you are in relation to Zoo Tiles for everyone here.
Sure. Yeah. My name is Josh Bakken, and I am the creator, designer, systems designer for Zutile's Hime. It's a strategic tile placement game. And additionally, aside from that, I also founded Zoo Studios. And so um, to be the company behind Zoo Tiles, if you will.
Awesome. And so Zoo Tiles, it looks super cool. For people who haven't seen it, you actually have a video that goes on going over the how to play and different things like that. Sort of a brief overview, which is also cool because it's like a 7 minute video, five of which is showing how to play, and you're able to completely go over the gameplay in that 5 minutes, and I was able to pick it up pretty quick, which I thought was cool. But if you want to do sort of a brief explanation of people who might be like, what does that mean, tiles and stuff like that?
Right? Yeah, yeah, sure. Yeah, so Zutile Hime is a strategic tile placement game. And the way I like to kind of describe it for TCG players out there is kind of like if you take your favorite TCG and it married dominoes in a really rough kind of way, that's kind of what you would get. It's very much top-down oriented versus you and me having, cards in our hand. So there's movement, like if you just take one of your favorite TCG games and you usually just have the tiles down to kind of represent um, enemies or whatever, and if those actually moved in relation to each other, like my cards were moving and your cards were moving on the actual table and they interacted with each other, that's kind of a loose description of how this particular strategic tile game works. And the game's loosely based on the creatures of the Chinese zodiac. So you've got, monkey, I'm pig, you're the pig. Everyone is some way, shape, or form associated with the game kind of automatically. So that's really cool with like having beginning conversations with someone when they're first learning the game. And let's see, what else? Yeah, I mean that's pretty much the rough description of it. I think that kind of gets the point across.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty cool. I remember as a kid, we went to a specific Chinese restaurant all the time, and the placemats had all the Chinese zodiacs on it. So I had to have a brief like idea of all of them and stuff like that. So I thought that was a cool idea of like, oh, this tile is like mine indirectly. This is me and stuff like that. So you have that sort of connection automatically to maybe to some of them. Um, one thing I noticed also with the tiles is you have those sort of Chinese zodiacs, like you said, with a pig, a rabbit, all that stuff, but they're represented by anime characters. You can kind of see that
Right.
in your background there. And not only that,
Yep.
it's
Yep. Yep.
really cool art as well. That was one thing that I noticed off the bat was like, oh, this is all like a consistent quality of art across the board. So like, what was the thought process of doing sort of more of an anime style for the Chinese zodiac characters? And is it all by the same artist or multiple artists?
All by the same artist,
Oh
and
wow.
and the way we got to this type of art, it's kind of an interesting story. So I actually started creating the game back in 2003, so long
Oh
time
wow.
ago. And the first iteration of the game, I went around and begged, borrowed, and stole, not stole, but begged and borrowed for different artists to do artwork for the game. So I got 19 amazing artists from back in the day. And what they provided was more what I would call traditional American art. So,
um,
like, I don't know if I have any examples of it right here, but not anime style, let's just put it that way.
yeah.
And so, and I had that art created, and that was the art that was with the game for for up until last year. And so I was showing someone, TR Raki, actually, who you've talked to through emails, and I was just showing him, hey, I got this game, blah 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 blah, and he is a certified otaku, so, and he's proud of it. So for anyone who thinks that might be, offensive or whatever, he's totally on board with that. He owns it. And so what he did when he looked at a completely different lens as I did, and he was like, oh wow, I wonder how cool it would be if I did this, like kind of like if we did this game in anime style. And so he actually went out and commissioned all the art that you see here. So it's a complete new take. It's a complete basically went and overhauled all the art to this great anime style. An artist who likes to go by 53C, that's what he likes to be called and known as. He's the artist who's done all the work for the Zoo Tiles Hime so far, and the response has been just phenomenal. So I'm really, really happy with the fact that that the art is consistent and is high quality. And so kind of to answer your question about why it's come to where it is now, we actually took both art styles to Gamma earlier this year. And so I was showing retailers the different styles, and I was like, this is classic and this is the Hime. And we had fans of both. There were fans of both, but kind of the universal, the universal response was, we love them both, and some retailers even like the classic a little bit better. That's what we call the older stuff. But they go, but we can sell this anime stuff 100 times more. And so we were like, and it was almost universal. Like everybody we talked to was pretty much saying, you got to do this art, you got to do this. So we're going to lead with our strengths, and that's kind of why we're starting off with this one. And then probably maybe later on this year, we might do a Kickstarter for the classic art for people who are more interested in that style. So that's kind of where the art kind of came from. And then in the future, I want to do even more different. I want to even do more different types and different styles of art. So I'm really excited about what the future holds.
Yeah, and I could definitely see the position the retailers are coming from, because I know, like, if I walked our local game store sells card games and board games and everything, and if I'm cruising through that, I'm probably similar to a TR, where if I see something, the thing that will catch my eye is like an anime style thing, and I'll be like, oh, let me go take a look at that real quick. So I could definitely see that. And I do really like that you did one artist for the whole thing, because that's one thing that some card games can be sort of iffy of, like, oh, this is a good card, oh, this is an okay card, or different things like that. So the consistency is cool. And also, you guys can see in his background there, one thing I really liked was, it was something briefly, I don't know if they still are because I don't keep up with it, but Caster Chronicles TCG had done with, where they had anime characters, but they were like representing previous cards that existed. So a previous card was like, I'm trying to think of something like a makeup one or like a pencil and stuff, but then they turned into an anime character sort of and had the essence of that. And I can see you did the same thing here, where like one's got like a tiger tail and right, bunny ears and different things like that, which I find really cool, and it's sort of like fun to see the creativity of seeing how they interpreted the different animals and creatures and stuff like that.
Yeah, that was really cool. I mean, for the classic, so TR was basically the art director for the Hime stuff that we have now. And for the classic, when I worked with the other artists, I didn't really give them a lot of art direction. I kind of just said, this is the title of the tile, and go ahead and give me a piece of art that you envision that would mean. I didn't even tell them what the tile did necessarily. So sometimes you would get just crazy stuff back, but I really love that a lot. And TR kind of took it, again, a lot of times I would just give him the title of the tile, and then sometimes a tile would come back and I'd be like, oh, sorry, we have to change that because this is kind of the opposite representation of what this tile is supposed to do. So there were a few instances of that, but I really like to give the artists and the art directors freedom to kind of bring their own vision, to the game. And I think that's just gotten a lot of great art, and it's given me a lot of great surprises.
Awesome. And so for the game itself, as a brief summary, you have the tiles that are the different Chinese zodiac characters and stuff like that, and you and your opponent are placing them against each other, like you said, similar to dominoes, where they match up. And when it creates a square, whoever created that grabs them and gets points. And then you also have tiles that you play that are essentially like, if you play other TCGs, they're like spell cards or something like that, where you're able to respond. And the cool thing about it for sorry if we have a really old dog in the background here, but some of the one thing I really liked was how your spells work specifically, I forget now, what are they called in the game?
Action and reaction.
Action and reaction. Yeah, and so if you guys play Force of Will, you know how, and I guess in other games as well, but Force of Will, if you play a chant or instant chant, and someone can respond, and you keep going, and when you're done, the stack resolves backwards. And the thing I liked about your game is not only does it do the exact same thing, but because you're using tiles, you're able to actually physically stack them and create a physical stack, and then you're able to remove each tile and resolve each one till you're at the bottom, which is super cool because it works the same way as like things like Force of Will, which adds for more, I think, more diverse and complicated plays. But because of the tile physical representation, it's actually easier for new players to grasp, whereas things like Force of Will, it actually took me, I know, a long time to grasp how the concept actually worked. Were you inspired by any specific game for that type of playstyle for that, or was it something that just came along?
Well, I wasn't necessarily inspired by any particular game, but what I wanted to do was, so I have been playing TCG. You might see a little bit of gray hair here. I've been playing for quite some time. I started playing in late '93, and I was around for the early days of of games, and then a lot of games trying to jump in and ride the coattails of more famous games. But I played them all for the most part, and what I wanted to do when I got the inspiration to do this game is I didn't want any part of any of that. Like I didn't want to make the main reason why it's a tile game as opposed to a card game, because I didn't want to be associated with somebody trying to jump on anybody's coattails, and I wanted to kind of bring a fresh take to a game basically like this. And so as far as the physical stack goes, it just came out. I don't want to say it came out of the blue, but it just is very obvious that if you have like a thicker tile, right? So here's a tile for people.
Oh, awesome.
But if you have a thicker tile, and you can set that to the side, and then someone else can add to it, and then you can just stack it just like you said. Conceptually, that just makes it so much easier. So another thing I wanted to do was I don't want the game, and I didn't want the game to be so cutthroat competitive. I wanted basically it to be accessible to kids to have fun with. Not that this is necessarily a kid's game, because it has a lot of strategy that even older adults you can get you can have some pretty intense games of this. But I really wanted to make these types of games a little bit more accessible to a wider audience of people. So like for instance, I don't have any problem. I've taken this and showed it at a convention in Eindhoven in the Netherlands, and I didn't have any problem teaching 9-year-olds how to play. I didn't have, like you said, it took a little while to kind of conceptually get the idea of a stack. But if you're showing it to someone and you go, oh, this is an action, so, and then everyone knows that what happens after an action, a reaction, right? So that's kind of the main reason why those tiles are titled that way. So yes, I want to start an action. Then if you look in your hand and you have reaction tiles, you can put it right on top. And like that's basically how I teach it, very kind of simple steps. Even though the strategy behind it can get very, very complex, especially when you're trying to figure out the best place to, put your tile next. So it wasn't so much that I got inspiration; it's almost that I got anti-inspiration in a way for how I designed the game. But you have to in any of those games, you have to have some kind of, I want to do something, and then somebody has the opportunity to react to that. So that's kind of built into these types of games, and I just, wow, it's thicker, it's better to teach it, and it just kind of lended itself to just making a physical stack. So that's kind of what I went with.
Yeah, and that's one thing I really liked was, and I've started to like more with stuff is finding things that are easier to learn, but have the possibility of more things like you said. If you play it more and want to get more deep into the complexities of it, and the nice thing about it being so simple, at least the baseline of it being so simple, is something like you at your locals or the game store owner can easily just like whip it out and be like, here's, you go this, and you're good to go, and makes it much more accessible to a large amount of people, which is really cool.
Yeah, because I don't think everybody is necessarily cut out for like the hardcore, TCG games, the keeping up with the meta and just, constantly just, the net decks and all that kind of stuff, So I kind of wanted an answer to that. That was kind of one of the reasons why I stopped playing back in the day. I probably stopped playing seriously around, I want to say, 96, 97 is when I just started seeing a bunch of the same types of things showing up at tournaments, and so what I ended up doing was just like making decks. I like the original, Jank Master, just making decks that would like go against, the meta. And then once that got boring, I was just like, no, I'm good for that. And then my son started to get back into them when he was 8, which was like about 10 years ago. And then I got back into it because he was enjoying it. And then there were some great sets during that time to collect. So yeah, so that's kind of my fault. That was kind of my philosophy on that type of stuff.
Well, speaking of like neck decking or deck building and all that, what exactly, or how does this game work as far as, is there deck building? Is it set decks? Like how does that work, especially with the right now you have one box that you can buy and stuff like that. Like what comes in that as far as what you can play with?
Yeah, so what we're doing is we're starting out with what we're calling a starter set 1. And basically what's in a starter set 1 are 2 pre-constructed decks, and each of those decks have 3 creature types in them. So in one of the pre-constructed decks, the person is playing with tiger, horse, and dog, and the other pre-constructed deck, the player is playing with pig, ram, and rabbit. And so that's kind of what you get when you get a box of Zoo tiles, and that's the only thing right now that we're releasing. And it's a starter set because that's exactly what we want this to be. We want someone to like it and go, but I'm not sure if I like the game or not, so they can buy this and they can play it. And then what they do after that, it's completely up to them. Like if they want to trade for other tiles, maybe somebody they know got the game but is not really super hot on it, so they maybe get some of the tiles from their starter set that they can kind of start to manipulate a little bit, and they can build out customized decks for that. And so that's starter set 1, and each starter deck in the set is 40 tiles. So basically in the starter set you get 80 tiles, 2 40 tile decks, and then in about, I don't know exactly when, maybe 6 months, 8 months down the road, we're going to be releasing starter set 2, which is going to have the rest of the animals in. So there's going to be snake, dragon, rat. Is that rat? Yeah. No, snake, dragon, rooster is going to be one of the pre-constructed decks for starter set 2. And then the other one is going to be rat, ox, and monkey are going to be the other pre-constructed deck. So then once starter set 2 comes out, you're going to have the baseline basically of all the creatures, and people can do anything they want with it. I purposely made it so there aren't a lot of for deck construction, meaning we don't have blanket rules like, oh, you can only have 4 of any one card or any one tile. Really, what there is, let me see if I can find one here. So for instance, really the only rule is, I don't know if you can see it here, but can you see that little 2 that's right there?
Vague, a little bit, yeah. I can see in the parentheses.
Okay.
There we
See a
go.
little,
Yeah.
yeah. So really, on certain tiles, there is a number at the end of the description in brackets, and that's the number that's the maximum number of this particular tile that you can have in any given deck. So for most of the tiles, you can have as many of them or as few as you want. But there's a few that I've called out and said, if someone had 4 of these, that would just make the opponent's life like just so horrible. So I've kind of gone through and made sure that I balanced it on a tile by tile basis versus making like a blanket statement about all cards that might be in a card game.
Awesome. And right now the game is up for pre-order, and I was surprised when I saw it because the pre-order price right now I believe is $23.95. If I remember
Yeah.
right. Which is it sounds really good for 80 tiles in a box for this game, and I'll have a link for that in the description below also for anyone interested in pre-ordering it. And how long does that, because right now that's a special price for pre-order, so how long does that pre-order price up, and by extension, when does the game release?
Yeah, so we were really, really fortunate to talk and get to know the people at Game Castle, and they really got on board very quickly, so quickly that we haven't even sent the game to print yet, but they just really liked what they saw, so they're like, you know what, let's make you guys a pre-order page and let's start getting the pre-orders in for this. So the game's going to go to print next month, and what that means is we should have it available in very late September, early October. So that'll
Okay.
be when the game is available. And we've already taken orders at Gamma. We took a lot of orders from a lot of retailers who came by and played the game and loved it. So we'll be shipping those out to them as soon as we get the product in. But yeah, to answer your question, late September, early October is when the game will officially launch or be
Awesome.
available.
And also, we're going to be having you back here for more videos. But was there anything you want to say for today before you go here?
No, that was great. Yeah, no.
Awesome. Well, like I said, that link will be in the description below, and I'll also put any of the related social media for this for people who want to follow it. It's really cool looking. I'll be definitely pre-ordering it as well because I really like the look of it and everything. But thanks for coming on.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
All right.